Quest for Bacon, Not So Special Stage, Bang Boom Splat. These are the 3 most popular Eddsworld video games that Ed Gould worked on with Ian Kelly, also known as Psychosis 91 or Sine Wave. I made a video about all 3 of them, but if you're watching this video on a computer you own, then there is no reason not to just give them a go. Every game is free to play, and while they're a little janky, they were made with a lot of love, just like classic Eddsworld. This time round, we're looking at Ed Gould's lost, unfinished, and forgotten Flash games. Some of these games you can play right now, others have been lost to the sands of time. You may think you know Eddsworld history, but I assure you that after this video you'll realise you have no idea. Welcome to Eddsworld Flash Games Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. 2 Eddsworld to game, here we go again. The Squeakquel. Let's do this thing.
Are you ready to go crazy?
I'm already hearing voices!
Starting off with a well-known fan favourite, Kid Cthulhu and the Jan Ken Bunch may just be one of the holy grails of Eddsworld Lost Media. It was going to be a Mega Man clone with artwork by Ed, coding by Ian, and music by an artist named Wolfgun. It was announced in 2009, but it was never completed because everyone on the team got busy. It did get some way into development, however. Ed made a chunk of the artwork for the thing and about half the levels were done. Until recently, we only had this blog post and this comment from Matt affirming the game's existence. But at the start of this year, Ian shared on Twitter that he was still in possession of the original files for Kid Cthulhu. Then in June, he teased a screenshot of the game while sharing pictures of his Eddsworld vinyl figure. Honestly, this game looks adorable. I love the design of this little Cthulhu guy. Ian did a lot of the graphics himself when Ed got busy, but it's worth restating here that this is Eddsworld history. Ian is now actually working in the video game industry, working in quality assurance on games like Sonic Mania, while also creating some music on the side. He made a mashup album of Space Jam and Hamilton. It's called Slamilton. Basically, Ian's busy, so I doubt that Kid Cthulhu will ever see the light of day. Still, I am overjoyed that we even have a screenshot. This is the most that we've seen of the game in 14 years. If you want to actually play a piece of Eddsworld Lost Media that feels a lot more like a real Eddsworld game, then might I recommend Dress the Head 2. This one is a simple character customization tool that uses a bunch of Eddsworld assets that you can drag around to make your own Eddsworld OC. There is no limit to where you can place the facial features, so you really can be as conventional or as wild as you'd like. I call this one Tordicius Maximus XVIII. Of all the games Ed put his name to, this one has to be my favourite. When capturing footage for this video, I legitimately recorded about 20 minutes of gameplay because I was enjoying my time so much. Looking at the thread under where this game was uncovered, people have come up with some really creative and fun designs, even though the mechanics here are so basic. It reminds me why I really love character builders like this. Dress the Head 2 was made by Ed in 2007, and if you're at all familiar with the concept of numbers, then you can probably guess that this game is a sequel. But sadly, the first Dress the Head game is now completely lost. Both games were hosted on the now defunct Put file and Cheesy Art, and while someone came forward with a file for Dress the Head 2, nobody seems to have saved Dress the Head 1 at any point. It may be lost forever. In a similar vein, there is Death from Above, which was made by Ed Gould and Justin Boisvert in 2010, and then lost until March 2023. It's essentially a fall-down clone with this cute little purple guy, and hey, that's the Eddsworld stripes. This one is clearly unfinished. Once you die, there's no trigger to reset the level, and the platform rising speed can be a little inconsistent. Maybe that's part of the challenge. There's not really much else to say about this one. It runs in a browser, so you can play it right now if you want. You just need the Ruffle extension. I contacted Lost Eddsworld on Twitter, who helped make this game and Dress the Head 2 playable for the first time in over a decade. Apparently, we didn't even know this thing existed until it was found. We don't know why it was made or why it was cancelled. Justin doesn't even remember making it. Somebody just messaged Lost Eddsworld one day and said, "Hey, would you like an unfinished game that Ed was making in 2010? And Lost Eddsworld said, yes. Yes, I would. If you go far back enough through Eddsworld history, you can find that things often get quite messy. Helicard made a couple of Eddsworld themed flash games for a competition back in 2007, but these were lost after he deleted his account. We've got some thumbnails and an archived forum thread, and that's it. Nobody has ever come forward with a copy of either game, and I'm not sure they ever will. A user named Mankey recalls playing part 1 back in the day. You'd play as an 8-bit Ed wandering around the house, and at the end you dance on stage in front of a crowd. They never played part 2, so information on that game is even more sparse. Going back even further, you'll eventually find the first game made by Ed and Ian as a duo, as far as we know, 2004's Roadkill, which is no longer available on Newgrounds, but is playable through an archive site. The concept here is actually pretty great. I'm almost certain you could think of a mobile game or something like that with an identical premise to this one. You're in a car, on a motorway, avoiding oncoming vehicles. Your goal is to survive as long as you can. I could really imagine getting addicted to a game like this back in the early days of smartphone gaming, which Roadkill actually predates by several years. That's how far back we're talking here. It shouldn't be any surprise then that the mechanics here are pretty rough. There isn't a score counter to show you how far you've driven, the playing field is way too narrow so it is impossible to see what comes next, and after driving for a bit, the oncoming vehicles just stop. Seriously, I managed to softlock my game here. What am I supposed to do now? Did Ian code eternity? What is this? Honestly, it's a miracle that Roadkill is still around because this sort of thing could have so easily been lost forever. Of course, not all of Ed's Flash games were so lucky. Ed's oldest surviving Flash game is 2003's Bendy Stick the Game. You might already know about this one, hell, I even made fun of it in a video one time. Bendy is the predecessor to Eddsworld if you didn't already know. It's the cartoon that Tom met Ed through before Eddsworld became a thing. Bendy the Game is that cartoon turned into an interactive movie with clickable elements that determine which sequence plays next. It's not great. It's a simple puzzle game that requires a lot of trial and error to get through, but I love the creativity on display here. I just think it's a creative use of the platform and it's nice that so much can be made of so little. Although it is the oldest game on Ed's Newgrounds page, it's somehow his third attempt at a video game. I want to be upfront here, there is very little surviving information about most of Ed's creations before this one. Ed's first and second games have been lost to the ether, with not even a screenshot surfacing in the 20 years since they were created. However, with a little bit of digging in the Wayback Machine, we can at least confirm the titles of 2 games older than this one. Before Bendy Stick the Game, there was Eddie Baggy Pants from 2003, not to be confused with the animation of the same name, which was uploaded 2 days later and is now also lost. We know next to nothing about the game, with very little about the animation. Eddie Baggy Pants was another series that Ed was making way back in the day, but a bunch of the series is lost now. All we have of the first animation is a mean comment from before it was deleted. This is why we can't have nice things. And Ed's first game, the very first one, was called Lock and Load, uploaded on the 30th of June 2003. It might just be the oldest anything on Ed's Newgrounds page, and once again we know nothing about it. According to Ed, this is the first game he ever made. However, depending on your definition, we can go one level deeper. Interactive Stick Faces, Choose His Fate, and Stick Theft Auto. These 3 Flash projects were uploaded by Ed under a different username on Stick Figure Death Theatre before it was shut down. Although the site didn't display upload dates, the pages were first archived between December 2002 and February 2003, 4 months before Lock and Load was uploaded to Newgrounds. They may have been around far longer than that, it's impossible to tell. Sadly, the files themselves were not archived, only the pages they were hosted on, but each one has the tag online game or miscellaneous, and each one boasts interactive elements in the description. Depending on what you consider to be a video game, these are the first Flash games that Ed Gould shared online. We have found the oldest surviving remnants of an Eddsworld video game. The internet is pretty awesome, and I'm happy that we have as many devoted archivists as we do, but old media is worryingly fragile, especially video games like these ones. Songs, books, movies, they're hard enough to preserve on their own. Video games are designed to run on specialist software, sometimes with a layer of copyright protection in place, and even when you have all the files, the hardware is often integral to the experience. In 2019, Nintendo shut down support for the Wii Shop channel, and with it we lost a treasure trove of WiiWare games, many of which were designed to take full advantage of the Wii's unique control scheme. Some of these games were ported to other consoles or PC, but lots of them were not, and now they are way more difficult to play on original hardware. And the Wii is a very popular home console. Just think of all the arcade games that are just not the same when played with a keyboard and mouse or with a generic controller. Or what about all the online multiplayer games with content that relies on player interaction? Those are simply impossible to preserve fully. And to bang on this drum again, copyright is also a concern. How do you preserve a game if the property rights belong to a publisher who doesn't want to publish it again? Just think of all the Flash games that weren't popular enough or deemed important enough to preserve before Adobe killed the software. That's someone's childhood, someone's masterpiece, lost forever. We may never have the first Eddsworld Flash game. One person thought to download Roadkill and preserve it on some website, and that's the only reason you can still play it today. Same with Dress Ahead 2. Same with Death from Above. These games are not masterpieces, but they are part of Eddsworld's history. And I think that's worth remembering.